A young woman stood at the crowded subway station, waiting for her train after a long, tiring day. The noise of rushing footsteps, the screeching of the arriving trains, and the hurried voices of strangers filled the air. Everyone seemed busy, lost in their own world, too focused on reaching somewhere. She leaned against the wall, clutching her bag tightly, hoping the train would arrive soon so she could finally go home and rest. But in the middle of the crowd, something caught her attention. An old man, with a cane in his hand, was slowly making his way through the station. His steps were unsteady, and his movements showed he could not see where he was going. He tapped his cane on the ground, trying to find his way through this sea of rushing people. Some brushed past him without even noticing, while others glanced for a second and turned away. He looked fragile, yet there was a certain dignity in the way he stood tall, refusing to give in to the chaos around him. The young woman's heart softened. She could see how he struggled, yet no one stepped forward. She wondered why people were so quick to ignore kindness. For a moment, she hesitated. Maybe someone else would help. Maybe he didn't want any help at all. But then she saw him almost stumble when someone rushed past and knocked his cane sideways. Without thinking further, she walked quickly toward him. "Sir, do you need some help?" she asked gently, her voice cutting through the noise of the station. The blind man turned his face slightly in her direction. His cloudy eyes, though unable to see, seemed to hold a depth of experience. "Yes, please. Just to the platform," he said in a soft, calm voice. She held out her arm, letting him take it carefully. His hand was frail but steady, and together they began walking toward the platform. She matched her steps to his, moving slowly so he wouldn't feel rushed. Around them, people hurried past, not even sparing a second glance. But for her, that moment felt different. It wasn't about reaching the train anymore. It was about making sure he reached safely. As they walked, he asked her small questions. "Is it crowded today?" He wondered aloud, his tone more conversational than curious. "Yes, very crowded," she replied, glancing at the mass of people around them. "People must be in such a hurry," he said quietly. "They always are," she answered. Realizing how true his words felt, she noticed how calm he was despite his situation. He wasn't frustrated, nor did he complain about the lack of help from others. Instead, he carried himself with quiet patience. It struck her deeply. Most people with perfect vision often grew angry in such crowds, yet here was a man who couldn't even see, still moving forward with grace. Finally, they reached the edge of the platform. The rumble of the approaching train echoed through the tunnel. She guided him closer, but carefully kept a safe distance from the edge. "The train is almost here," she told him, her voice firm yet caring. "Thank you, child," he said softly. "You've been kind." When the train stopped, the doors slid open and the crowd surged forward. She guided him through the press of people and made sure he found a seat inside. As he settled down, he turned his face toward her once again. "Kindness," he whispered, his voice steady but meaningful, "is never forgotten." She smiled faintly, unsure what to say. It was such a small act, something anyone could have done. To her, it didn't feel like much at all. She nodded, wished him a safe journey, and stepped back onto the platform before the train doors closed. As the train pulled away, carrying the old man into the tunnel, she stood for a moment watching it disappear. She thought about his words. She didn't know his name, where he was going, or what his life story was. But something about him stayed in her mind. Maybe it was the way he carried himself, or maybe it was the simple truth in his words. She shook her head lightly and walked away, telling herself it was just another ordinary encounter. Little did she know, that simple choice to stop and help had started something far greater than she could imagine. At that moment, she believed she would never see him again, but fate had already planned something different for the next day. Something that would change her life in ways she couldn't yet understand. The next morning arrived like any other. with the city already alive before the sun had fully risen. The young woman left her small apartment, carrying the same worn-out bag she always took to work. Her steps were slow, as if her body still carried yesterday's exhaustion. The air smelled of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, mixed with the faint smoke of cars already crowding the streets. She didn't think much of the previous night, yet the image of the blind old man at the subway station lingered in her thoughts. His quiet voice, his gentle thank you, and the words, "Kindness is never forgotten," kept replaying in her mind. She brushed it off, telling herself it was just a passing moment. Her walk to the station was the same as every day, but something felt slightly unusual. As she stepped onto the sidewalk outside her building, she noticed a sleek black car parked near the curb. It wasn't the kind of car that normally showed up in her neighborhood. The polished body gleamed even in the soft morning light, and the driver stood by the door in a neat suit. At first, she thought maybe someone important lived nearby, and it had nothing to do with her. But then, the driver's eyes met hers, and he stepped forward with a calm, respectful nod. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Are you the young woman who helped an elderly blind gentleman at the subway yesterday evening?" She froze for a second, her mind racing. How could he possibly know? She looked around, half expecting it to be a mistake. "Yes, I did," she admitted, her voice hesitant. "Why?" The man gave her a reassuring smile. "He asked us to find you. He would like to meet you again." Her heart skipped. Why would that old man want to see her again? She had only helped him across the station, nothing more. Confused, she asked, "Is something wrong? Did I do something I shouldn't have?" "Not at all," the driver replied quickly, shaking his head. "In fact, quite the opposite. He was deeply moved by your kindness. He wanted to thank you personally." She hesitated. Part of her felt nervous about stepping into a stranger's car. Another part of her remembered the man's calm voice and the way he carried himself. Something told her this wasn't a trick or a danger. It felt genuine, though mysterious. She nodded slowly. "All right. But where are we going?" The driver opened the door respectfully. "You'll see. He's waiting for you." With cautious steps, she got into the car. The interior smelled faintly of leather and carried a sense of quiet luxury. The ride was smooth as the city blurred past outside her window. She sat silently, her thoughts filled with questions. Who exactly was this blind man? Why would he send someone in such a car just to find her? She told herself not to expect anything, but her curiosity only grew stronger. After a short drive, the car slowed near a quiet residential area far from the noise of the subway. The houses here were bigger, surrounded by neat gardens and tall fences. The driver guided her toward one of the homes, its entrance wide and welcoming, yet not overly grand. It wasn't the mansion of a rich show-off. It felt more like a place of peace. As she stepped inside, the first thing she noticed was how calm the house felt. Soft light filled the room, and the walls carried photographs of smiling people, moments of family and charity captured in frames. It felt lived in, not cold. And then, seated comfortably in a chair near the window, was the same old man she had helped the night before. He was dressed neatly, though still simple, and his cane rested by his side. When he heard her footsteps, his face lifted, and a gentle smile formed. "You came," he said warmly, his voice steady. She nodded nervously. I didn't expect to see you again. Honestly, I didn't think I did anything special." The old man tilted his head slightly, almost as if he could see through her words, even without sight. "And that is why it was so special. You stopped when no one else did. That speaks more than you realize." The young woman stood there quietly, unsure what to say. She couldn't understand why he was treating her simple action with such importance. To her, it was nothing more than common courtesy. Yet, the weight in his words made her wonder if there was more to him than she knew. The old man gestured for her to sit. "Please, child, join me." "There's something I'd like to tell you." As she sat down, her heart beat faster. She had a feeling she was about to learn something that would change her view of that ordinary night forever. The next day began quietly for the young woman, but her heart carried the weight of curiosity from her visit with the old man. She kept replaying the moment he said her kindness meant more than she realized. His words echoed in her mind as she went about her daily routine. She had never imagined that simply helping someone at the subway could lead to such an encounter. Yet, she still had no clear idea of who he really was or why her small action mattered so much. As she prepared to leave for work again, she noticed something unusual. Another car was waiting outside her building, different from yesterday's, but equally polished and elegant. She froze on the steps, a strange mix of nerves and curiosity bubbling inside her. The driver stepped out, bowing his head politely before speaking. "Good morning," he said gently. "Sir would like to see you again. If you're comfortable, I'll take you to him." She hesitated, glancing at the car. It all felt so surreal. Why would this elderly man keep reaching out to her? Still, something deep inside told her it wasn't danger, but rather fate pulling her closer to answers. With a small nod, she agreed and stepped into the car. The ride took longer this time, leaving the noise of the city far behind. The scenery shifted from crowded streets to wide-open roads lined with tall trees and quiet houses. It felt almost dreamlike. Her hands tightened around her bag, and she stared out the window, her mind racing with questions. When they finally stopped, the young woman found herself standing before a large building that looked more like a retreat home than a house. The walls were painted in warm colors, and the entrance was wide with beautifully carved doors. There was no sign of luxury being flaunted. Everything about the place spoke of quiet power and respect. Inside, she was welcomed warmly by staff who treated her like an honored guest. They guided her to a spacious room where sunlight streamed through tall windows. The old man was seated at the center, this time surrounded by a few individuals who stood nearby, speaking softly and treating him with clear respect. He raised his head slightly as if sensing her arrival. "Ah, you're here," he said with a gentle smile. "I was hoping you would come." She stepped forward cautiously, unsure if she should bow, shake hands, or simply stand quietly. "I still don't understand why you've called me," she admitted honestly. "I only did what anyone should have done," the old man chuckled softly. "And yet, not everyone did. Out of hundreds of people, you were the only one who stopped." She lowered her eyes, feeling her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to being praised for something so small. The room fell quiet for a moment before one of the staff stepped forward. He leaned close to her and spoke in a low, respectful tone. "You should know, the man you helped isn't just any ordinary stranger. He has spent his life building more than businesses. He has helped entire communities. Many people owe their livelihoods and opportunities to him." Her eyes widened as the words sank in. She looked back at the old man in disbelief. You're a businessman?" she asked carefully. He nodded slowly. "Once, yes. I built companies, but I always believed in using success to lift others. Now I spend my days helping those in need. I go out into the world quietly, without telling anyone who I am, because I want to see if kindness still exists. Last night I found my answer in you." Her heart pounded. She could hardly believe the truth. She had thought he was just another elderly man navigating life with quiet strength. But now she realized there was a whole story behind him. He wasn't just someone grateful for a helping hand. He was someone who had the power to change lives. "You tested me?" she asked softly, half in wonder, half in disbelief. "Not you," he corrected gently. "The world. And the world showed me you." The words struck her deeply. She didn't know whether to feel honored or overwhelmed. She stared at him, still struggling to understand why her small act mattered so much to someone so important. The old man leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I want you to understand something. Kindness doesn't need to be grand. It doesn't need recognition. True kindness is when you give without expecting anything in return. That's what you showed me. Her chest tightened as she realized how rare it must have been for him to experience such sincerity. He probably had people treating him with respect because of his status, his wealth, or his influence. But here she was, a simple stranger, who had helped him without knowing any of that. She swallowed hard, finally managing to speak. I didn't do it for recognition. I just couldn't walk away. And that, the old man said with a smile, is what makes you different. The room remained quiet after his words, the weight of them hanging in the air. She sat there, realizing this was no ordinary meeting. It wasn't just about gratitude, it was the beginning of something she couldn't yet imagine. She had no way of knowing that this encounter would soon lead to an unexpected offer, one that would shake her life completely. The young woman sat nervously in the large, sunlit room, her hands folded in her lap. She still couldn't believe she was here, face to face with the same old man she had helped at the subway station. His calm smile made her feel at ease, but the quiet respect shown by the people around him reminded her that he was far more important than she first imagined. Her heart beat quickly, unsure of what was about to happen next. The old man rested his hand lightly on the arm of his chair, his cane leaning beside him. "You must be wondering why I've asked you to come here again," he said in a slow, steady tone. She nodded honestly. "Yes, I am. I really don't think I did anything special. I just helped someone who needed it." He smiled softly at her words. "That is exactly why I wanted to meet you again. You didn't help me for recognition. You didn't stop because you expected something in return. You helped because you cared. And that is rare." Her cheeks warmed at his gentle praise. She lowered her gaze, feeling shy. "I still don't understand why it matters so much." He lifted his face slightly, as though he could see her expression through the haze of blindness. "For most of my life, I worked to build something meaningful. Businesses, yes, but also communities, schools, hospitals. People know my name, but I wanted to know if, outside of all the wealth and titles, true kindness still exists. So from time to time, I go out alone, without telling anyone who I am." And then, there you were. The words sank deep into her heart. She sat quietly, unsure how to respond. Finally she whispered, "Anyone would have helped you." The man shook his head gently. "You saw it yourself. Hundreds passed me by. But you chose to stop." The room fell silent for a moment. She could hear the faint sound of birds chirping outside the window, the distant hum of cars on the road, and the quiet breath of the people around them, waiting for his next words. Then, with surprising strength, the old man turned slightly toward her. "I want to invite you into my world," he said firmly. "Not because of pity, not because of charity, but because kindness should never go unnoticed." She blinked, unsure what he meant. "Your world?" she repeated softly. He nodded. "I want you to see what I do. I want you to meet the people whose lives have been changed, because they once received a hand when they needed it most, just like the hand you offered me yesterday. If you agree, you will spend time with me and my team, see the projects we support, and understand the true power of compassion." Her breath caught. She had expected perhaps a simple thank you, maybe even a small gift. But this was something entirely different. "Why me?" she asked again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you didn't hesitate," he replied, his words carrying quiet power. "The world needs people like you. People who still believe in humanity, even when others turn away." She sat back in her chair, her mind racing. 1,000 thoughts ran through her head. She wasn't anyone important. She wasn't wealthy. She didn't have a high position, and she had no special influence. She was just an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Yet here she was, being told she could be part of something much bigger than herself. For a moment, fear touched her heart. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she didn't belong in his world? But then she remembered the moment at the subway, the way she had felt when she held his arm, guiding him through the crowd. She hadn't thought about being good enough then. She had just done what felt right. That the old man seemed to sense her hesitation. He leaned forward slightly, his voice calm and reassuring. Do not doubt yourself. Kindness is the greatest strength you can carry. That alone is enough. One of the staff stepped forward, handing her a simple envelope. This contains an invitation, the man explained. Tomorrow, we are visiting one of the schools that has been built with his support. He would like you to join him. Her fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the envelope. She stared at it for a moment, the weight of the moment pressing against her chest. She looked back at the old man, his blind eyes filled with a quiet light, as if he could still see her soul. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Softly, say yes, he replied with a gentle smile. That's all. Her lips curved into a small, uncertain smile. Then, yes, the room seemed to brighten with her answer, and the old man leaned back, satisfied. Good, he said simply. Tomorrow will open your eyes in ways you cannot yet imagine. She left the house with her heart pounding, the envelope clutched tightly in her hand. The city felt different now, as though the air itself carried new meaning. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she felt deep inside that her life was about to change forever. Asterisk. The morning sun painted the sky in soft shades of gold as the young woman prepared herself for what lay ahead. She held the envelope from the previous day tightly in her hands, almost afraid to open it again, even though she already knew what it contained. The words of the blind old man echoed in her heart. Tomorrow will open your eyes in ways you cannot yet imagine. She didn't know if she was ready, but she felt drawn toward whatever truth waited for her. A car arrived just as promised, and she stepped inside quietly. The ride was long and calm, carrying her through busy streets that slowly gave way to quieter roads lined with trees and small houses. At last, they reached a school building. It wasn't grand or luxurious, but it radiated warmth and purpose. Children's laughter echoed from the courtyard, filling the air with an energy that instantly softened her heart. As she stepped out, she saw the old man being gently guided toward the entrance by his staff. Despite his blindness, he walked with calm confidence, as if he could sense every smile, every laugh, every bit of joy surrounding him. When he heard her approach, his face brightened. You came, he said warmly. I did, she answered softly, her eyes scanning the children running around in neatly pressed uniforms. She could see happiness in their faces, though many of them looked like they came from families that didn't have much. The old man motioned for her to walk beside him. Together, they entered the school, where teachers greeted him with deep respect and gratitude. Some of them whispered stories about how his support had changed everything: the classrooms, the books, the meals for the children. The young woman felt her heart swell as she listened. She began to understand why he wanted her here. This wasn't just about money or power. It was about changing lives. At one point, a little boy ran up to the old man and hugged him tightly. Thank you, sir, the boy said in a cheerful voice. Because of you, I can read now. The old man knelt slightly, his blind eyes softening with emotion. He touched the boy's shoulder gently. No, child. Because of people who care. The young woman watched this scene with tears forming in her eyes. It was clear that the man had dedicated his life to spreading kindness far beyond himself. And now, for reasons she still didn't fully grasp, he wanted her to be a part of it. Later, they sat together in a quiet corner of the school garden. The old man turned his face toward her, his voice steady. Do you see now why I asked you to join me? She nodded slowly. I think I do, but I still don't understand why me. He smiled knowingly. Because kindness is the seed from which everything grows. Wealth, influence, power, these mean nothing if there is no compassion behind them. I spent my life building, But even now, I search for people who remind me that humanity still lives in simple acts. You reminded me of that. Her throat tightened with emotion. She thought about the subway station, how small that moment had seemed. And yet here she was, being told that her choice to stop had mattered more than she ever imagined. I want to give you something, the old man continued. Not as a gift of wealth, but as a door to opportunity. Tell me, what is it that you've always dreamed of? What is the one thing you've wished for but never thought possible? The young woman hesitated. No one had ever asked her that before, at least not seriously. She had dreams, of course, finishing her education, starting something meaningful, maybe even helping others in her own way. But life's struggles had always pushed those dreams aside. I've always wanted to study more, she admitted softly. I wanted to do something that could make a difference, but I never had the chance. The old man nodded as though he had been expecting that answer. Then that chance is yours now. I will make sure you have everything you need, your education, your future. Not because you helped me, but because the world needs more people like you, carrying kindness into places where it has been forgotten. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I don't know how to thank you. He reached out, placing his frail hand gently over hers. By doing for others what you did for me. That is thanks enough. At that moment, she realized the truth. The real reward wasn't the promise of education, or even the opportunities that lay ahead. It was the reminder that one small act of kindness had the power to ripple outward, touching lives in ways she could never predict. As the day drew to an end, the young woman left the school with a heart that felt lighter yet stronger than ever before. She had walked into the subway station that night as an ordinary person. Now, she walked into her future as someone who had been given, not just a gift, but a responsibility. Her story became a quiet reminder to anyone who heard it. Sometimes the smallest gestures, a hand extended, a moment of care could open doors to the most unexpected blessings.